Uncle Ben he doesn't sing or anything. He's just on the package. But they've kind of gone postmodern with Uncle Ben. And see, basically, Uncle Ben gets cut off so that you have the smiling eyes, and he doesn't say anything because for him to speak, he would be speaking in black dialect, and that would be offensive. But he's just this smiling old black man who comforts us. And you see billboards that are where they multiply the face over and over again. And the whole idea of calling them, of course, uncle and aunt was an endearment that would say, I don't own you, we are family. And it covered over the political situation of slavery. But Uncle Ben's rice is still the leading brand of rice. And Aunt Jemima's pancakes are, now they're a whole product line.
Is there anything wrong with featuring Uncle Ben?
Well, and it's an interesting question, and actually I think there's a more elaborate discussion happening in Allegheny County. Anybody here from Allegheny County, Maryland, where there's a mountain called Negro Mountain, and it actually was named Negro Mountain to honor a black man who fought in the French and Indian War against the Native Americans, so defending the white people. So they didn't name the name. Evidently his name was Nemesis. They didn't name it Nemesis Mountain. They named it Negro Mountain, and Baltimore area African Americans are trying to get the name changed, and Allegheny County people are saying no, this is the name. There's tradition and heritage versus bruised feelings. Negro actually comes from a more progressive area than Uncle Ben and Aunt Jemima. I personally don't buy them. I think it's a personal choice. Some African Americans buy them because there's involvement, particularly with Aunt Jemima, because that fierce maternal image has currency in African American cultures as well as white cultures. Uncle Ben, not so much. I won't say right or wrong. I think it's a personal choice.
Yeah, because you have other things like Betty Crocker that also feature a person.
Right.
Other brands, I can't think of what. There's Famous Amos cookies now.
Right. Well, and Famous Amos was a real person,
and it's a cult of personality.
Exactly. I thought Mrs. Butterworth was black until they had her talk in the ads. I grew up thinking that she was the more progressive black image for pancakes. So that's a type of racial mastery that African Americans and other minorities do when they take something and say, well, we did it to Bill Clinton. We'll take it and make him ours. Another historical piece that we really need to get to is Bill Cosby. Because, of course, these were fictional black people. But the truism was that you could not have a Host ad or a celebrity ad featuring a black person because white people wouldn't buy it. And you're actually some of you are just a little young to have had Cosby nights as families. But he was huge. It's hard to describe how huge he was. It was top-rated sitcom at the time, the longest running sitcom. People were buying his fatherhood book, much to the surprise of a lot of people. And he convinced them. He said, let me show you that I can sell pudding pops. And think about it, it's a huge star. Pudding pops are kids' food, so it seemed like a mismatch. But let's look at the pudding pop ad.
Yeah, I have a couple of them. And before the show, I remember our family used to listen to his comedy albums.
Right.
They were hysterical.
Yeah,
Right.
they were hysterical.
Right.
Yeah.
And what happened with NBC is that he pitched the show originally as a working class show, and Brandon Tartikoff said, no, we're going to make him a middle class show. And actually, you may remember the show he did after the Cosby Show, which was working class. He went back to that environment. Okay, this is 1984.
The issue at hand is Jell-O pudding pop. Your vote, Ohio.
Ohio loves chocolate, Dad.
Texas.
Creamy Blues Cocoa Swirl, Mr. Speaker.
Jell-O brand pudding pops made with the goodness of real Jell-O pudding.
New York.
We vote chocolate caramel swirls, sir.
A delicious response. All in flavor.
Hey, yum!
Jell-O pudding pops, the great taste that's popping up everywhere.
Okay, so now right there he's in the the dad of the Huxtables persona, with the, and nothing wrong with him, middle class presentation. There's nothing wrong with that. It was a huge success. And he broke essentially the color bar for African American celebrities being able to sell mainstream products. Let's watch the other. You have a couple.
I think there's a couple of them.
Because before, I mean, if you think about what had happened prior to the civil rights movement.
How long has it been since your mom's fixed jello pudding for you? How long?
A long, long time.
But she knows it's good for you, right? And she knows that you love it, right?
Look at the house.
I forgot. Maybe I should remind her. Mom, you know how the kids love jello pudding. And you know it's made with fresh milk, so it's wholesome. And you haven't made jello pudding for them since...
Last night.
What? Kids love jello brand pudding. Remember?
If you go back and look at reruns of the Huxtable, he's always getting duped by the kids. He's actually, the smart person in the household is the wife, and he's just the extra kid. And so that thing where, he's pleading with the mom to your kid loves jello pudding, and you haven't made jello pudding since, and the kid goes last night, and he realizes we realize at the exact moment that he's been duped. Now, sitcoms enough to know that the dad is often the dupe, right? He's just more the dupe than usual. What did you see about the house, though?
It was upper class.
It was gorgeous. There's nothing there that speaks to the old stereotype of African Americans as being the face of poverty, as being degraded, as being immoral. Actually, the stereotypes of African Americans is now pretty much the stereotype, except for the social class element, of gays and lesbians. That idea that somehow that just being born that way makes you immoral. It's the same. You'll see the same stereotypes apply. And yes, I am suggesting that the stereotypes are fluid, that we just find somebody and put them on them. Is what the culture does. Now, so this was the Huxtables were a new image from Middle America, and actually would still be a new image because most Americans still overestimate how many poor African Americans they are, right? 80% of the people on welfare are white. I mean, it's pretty much proportional to the population, but the face of poverty for this country is black. And hip hop actually trades on that, despite the fact that obviously most of them are not poor anymore. But this ushered in this new view, and Ronald Reagan once said that the problem of African Americans and poverty had been erased because look at the Cosbys. And so he had repositioned it into social reality. People do that with media anyway, right?
Well, I think, and you started to say before the civil rights movement of the 60s, in advertising, there were African Americans, but they were in very subservient roles, like cooks and maids. And
there were lots of Aunt Jemima-like figures, lots of Uncle Ben-like figures, all over the place. They were just the most famous ones. Yes. And they were very valuable to the companies, not so much to the actors that played them, but this was a breakthrough moment. Now, so what you've got at about the same time is this explosion in the black middle class. There's always been a black middle class and always been an affluent black middle class, but changes in education were happening about this time. For instance, my sister would have graduated from college in the late 1970s was the first big class at Chapel Hill. So there were many more black people going to college. There were more black people in grad school than there are now. There's a big change. So there's this big explosion in nouveau riche African. This is when PG County and places like Chicago and LA began to see this large burgeoning black middle class. So suddenly you've got these people who are still very brand loyal, who have a lot of disposable income and spend in highly predictable ways. African Americans and Latinos spend a lot more on music, for instance, than other populations. Always have, still do in the age of iTunes. And you don't lose anything. And if you put a black person on there, black people will buy your product. Think about it. Pudding Pops is. Do you buy pudding pops? It's not something you have to have. And have you ever had homemade pudding? Mm-hmm. There's a world of difference, right? between homemade and this